Michel Odent, how old are you? And how do you feel?
So ask me about my age. I'm 94. That means I was born in 1930.
How do you feel?
I think, compared with other people my age, I feel good. Apart from details, for example, my sight, I need hearing aids and so on, but quite normal for people my age.
Where were you born and to what family?
I was born in a French village, an hour north of Paris. I can say that I was the first baby for my mother, who at that time was 35. The labor started at 10 p.m. I was born at midnight. And a small detail, after that, my mother often said that the day of my birth was the most joyful day of her life. This, I can summarize what I know.
And what was your family like?
My family, not to say, all of them were bakers.
Bakers, as in people that make bread?
Yes, that's right. From the paternal side, maternal side, they were bakers. And even in the village where I was born, my ancestors were already bakers at the time of the French Revolution. They created the first bakery at the time of the French Revolution. They created the first bakery. Before that time, people were doing their own bread by themselves.
What was your childhood like?
To summarize, a great part of my time as a child was during the German occupation. Because at the beginning of the German occupation, 1940, I was 10. At the end, I was 14. So I had to, at that time, there was no car and so on. So I had to go to secondary school, 13 kilometers away, with a bicycle. At that time, we were moving with bicycles. So that was special about my childhood, beginning of adolescence and so on.
What were your first jobs?
Job? Difficult to say what is a job, because I was a medical student. So my first job was as what is called an externe, to say a medical student with minor responsibility. The first one was in surgery. But after that, I had 6 months also in obstetrics. So I started with some experience in obstetrics and surgery. After that, I went in medical units, pediatric, many things, like all medical students.
So you studied medicine?
Then I studied medicine. I was interested in human beings. And at that time, best way to study medicine, finally, the best way to study human beings was to study medicine. At that time, there was nothing like human science. No, there are not people studying psychology, sociology, and so on. So I studied medicine, my interest in human beings.
So you then worked in a war. Is that true?
So originally, finally, I was trained as a surgeon, having an experience in obstetrics. But, so that when I did my military duty, late, because of the medical studies, I delayed my medical, I delayed my time in the army, it was during the war, independence war in Algeria.
Okay.
And I spent 2 years in Tizi Ouzou in Algeria doing emergency surgery, war surgery, and emergency surgery in general, including the new technique of cesarean section. So this is how I became familiar with the new technique of cesarean section as a surgeon with also an obstetrical background. That was 1958, 1959.
How old were you then?
I spent 2 years in Algeria.
And what age were you?
I was 28, 29.
And so, talk to me, like, what was the day-to-day work? What were you seeing?
I was in a hospital, Tizi Ouzou, occupied by the French army, spending my life in the hospital. And working day and night, emergency medicine, day and night. So incredibly busy. But I learned a lot.
Yes. And so did your patients come with, like, just...
Most of them were injured soldiers arriving by helicopter, because it's a country with mountains and roads were dangerous. It was during the war. So most injured people, either French army or the other army, the Algerian army against them, were arriving by helicopter. So it was sometimes a surprise, suddenly a big number, you have to face the situation. It was a way to be familiar with emergency medicine.
What was some of the hardest things you saw and you had to work on?
It was much more to adapt to big arrival, big number of people arriving at the same time, And when we thought we had finished operating, another one was arriving.
When did you marry and have a family?
I married just before going to the army in 1957. And I had my first child in 1958, when I was in the army.
Okay. What was it like to become a father?
It was very special, because I was in the army in Algeria when childhood, so it was special. But I can say it was special.
Why did you become so interested in births?
I became involved in childbirth a little bit by chance. Because when I was back to the normal life, non-military life, civilian life, in 1962, I found an opportunity to become to be in charge of the surgical unit of French hospitals, civilian hospitals, state hospital, an hour from Paris. I thought an hour from Paris is perfect in Bretagne. So I went there in charge of the surgical unit. But in that hospital, there was a small maternity unit. I didn't know that before. Small maternity unit, 200 births a year, 2 midwives. And when the 2 midwives learned about my background, learned that I knew the new technique of cesarean section, well, in the town there was only an old surgeon who didn't know the new technique. When they had a problem, they were calling me. So unofficially, I was also in charge of this small maternity unit, 200 births a year. I found that quite interesting as an addition to my job in surgery. And because interesting because it was a rural area, many women coming from villages, you know, and it was the beginning of hospital birth. And for many of them, going to the hospital was to die, you know, and suddenly they were told you go there to give birth. So I understood the importance of the environment. So gradually, I'll summarize, I have to be fast. We tried to modify the environment to satisfy the needs of these women living in villages, you know, and were had to go to a hospital to give birth. So I have to summarize. For example, we created home-like birthing rooms. Birthing room where you can forget you are in a hospital. We invited them to come and sing together on the piano. So the hospital were the place where they were singing, you know, many things like that.
What doctors and previous intellectuals inspired you the most?
I'm not sure. I've been really inspired by doctors where childbirth is concerned. I've been inspired by some doctors in terms of surgical technique, but this is another matter. I don't want to talk about too much now. In fact, what I learned about childbirth came by chance, occasionally, in an unexpected way, and it didn't come from doctors specialized in obstetrics. I'll give you an example of an opportunity I had suddenly to understand what I consider essential in birth physiology, in the basic need of women in labor. In 1964, when I was already in PTVA, our hospital for 2 years, a friend of mine was working for a pharmaceutical firm, told me, we have a new product. It's called gamma wash, a detail. People say that it's like a neurotransmitter making the brain calmer. They say cannot be dangerous because our brain is producing this molecule. It can be dangerous. In French, it's what called gamma wash, a detail, you know. But they say that it works like oxytocin. Oxytocin, the hormone that stimulates uterine contractions. We already knew that at that time. It was recent knowledge. And he said, do you want to try it? Give me some, do you want I send you some bottle? At the time, there were not a lot of bureaucracy, you know. I said, yes, okay, I'll try. So he sent me some bottles. And when the woman was in labor, we tried a drip of this drug. And when the woman had this drip in her vein, suddenly she became completely crazy, shouting, screaming, walking naked in the corridor. But unacceptable in a maternity hospital. But baby was born right away. And I said, ha. I had a ha-ha. I've understood. It's not working like oxytocin, this drug. It's eliminating the activity of the neocortex, of the new brain, of the brain thanks to which we can do mathematics, thanks to which we can send human beings to the moon, thanks to which we are human beings, you know. it is putting this neocortex at rest. And that's the key to understand human birth. Human birth, in general, cannot work as long as a woman is thinking. To give birth, a woman must stop thinking. To be on another planet, stopping thinking. I've understood what is essential. While everybody wanted to help women to give birth, wanted to facilitate the problem to them, I understood that that's not the point. It's an involuntary process. The point is not, it's counterproductive to help it. What you can do is to make it possible, to facilitate it by eliminating the activity of the thinking brain, of the neocortex. So when you ask me if I learned from colleagues and so on, I said, no, I learned from stories like that. And that's a turning point in my I must say, my life, you know. After that, it was reinforced by many anecdotes. I don't want to, an anecdote among others. A woman was apparently in pre-labor, some contractions, labor was ready to start, or already starting, you know. And her neighbor already had her baby, celebrating the birth, labor in a bedroom, double bedroom. She was celebrating the birth of her baby, and they had bottles of champagne. And they asked this woman, was probably in beginning of labor, do you want to drink champagne with us? Oh, she said yes. We gave her a glass of champagne, like that. Oh! Labor started strong immediately. She could not reach the birthing room, she gave birth in the corridor. So, through anecdotes like that, I learned what is essential, what is not understood. After 10,000 of years of birth process controlled by the cultural milieu, the cultural interferences, who want to help, to guide, to control, I understood that the point is to protect the laboring woman against any kind of neocortical stimulation. That to say, never talk to a woman in labor, or be careful of light in her word, or be careful of anything attracting the attention of a woman in labor. For example, if you look at her, you stimulate her neocortex, you know, or something worrying and something. I understood what is essential. I understood what are the basic needs of laboring woman. The basic need of laboring woman, the basic need is to feel protected. The word is protection. Forget helping, guiding, controlling. Forget it's not cultural. Among people promoting what they call natural childbirth, physical birth, you know, there's about coaching. Forget that. Medical people talk about labor management. It's the same way of thinking. It's cultural. No, protect against inhibitory factor. So when you ask me what I learned perhaps from colleagues, I said no. Yes, for surgical technique, yes. But about the birth process, it's anecdotes. Perhaps because I was not an obstetrician, not paying attention to stories like that. That's probably really the turning point in my career. You know, this story of a woman who had intravenous drip with a gamma washer.
What do you attribute your success to? What do you attribute your success to? How did you become successful?
Yeah, I will not talk about success. I said that I have understood something. Success is much more about how the media react, what they know, So the media never wrote about what I understood about neocortical inhibition, what is essential. The media, in general, focused on something else. It is that in the 1970s, I was interested in the attitude we might have when a woman is in labor. Has terrible back pain, it's quite common, and the labor does not work. It's a common situation, well-known situation. I suggested several ways. One was intradermic, that is to say, intracutaneous injection of sterile water inside the skin. It works well, but no interest in the media, and it's cheap, nothing to sell, so forget it. But at the same time, I thought that perhaps immersion in water at temperature of the body might be a good way to reduce the need for drugs. And at that time, in our maternity unit, we only had a little bath, like the bath you have at home. So I went to a shop in our town, and I bought a paddling pool, with a plastic inflatable paddling pool, and a garden paddling pool. We found a space in the maternity unit to install this paddling pool. And when a woman in hard labor, oh, my back, she said, oh, let's try to relax in the birthing pool. She could be completely immersed, not like a bath at home. And it works well. Women were attracted by water, and it was useful, a way to replace drugs. But occasionally, what happened is that it was working so fast that some women, when baby was coming, didn't want to get out or had not the time to get out. So we understood and we could anticipate that baby can be born underwater. That we understood that baby is born underwater, the baby delaying the first breath and so on. Baby can be born underwater, even it's not intentional. So this is how I wrote to explain to my colleagues that human baby can be born underwater. I must say that I explained that in a well-known, authoritative medical journal, prestigious, The Lancet. I wrote an article about that, explaining that the use of birthing pool was a way to replace medication when a woman has back pain, difficult first year and so on. But I was warning my colleagues that if, by chance, a woman has not the time to get out of the pool, and if baby is born underwater, don't panic. It's possible, even it's not intentional. And the interesting thing, that although it was a kind of addition to my article, a parenthesis, don't panic. In many groups of promoting natural childbirth, they only remembered birth underwater. And the media were fascinated by birth underwater. So I was better known for birth underwater. Well, for me, the turning point in my career was understanding the concept of neocortical inhibition. To give birth, a woman must stop thinking. Go to another planet, forget the world.
So you differentiate between personal success,
yes, because
achievement, and then success as seen by the rest of the world.
Yes, for example, recently in London, my partner was walking in the street. If a neighbor told her, she was often talking with neighbors, "Oh, I realize that your partner is the obstetrician who invented birth underwater." So there is a kind of discrepancy, because what I consider important in what I've done in my life, understanding neocortical inhibition, a key for understanding human nature in general, some physiological processes in particular, including the birth process, but not only the birth process. So there is a discrepancy with the point of view of the often the general public, the media, birth underwater.
What life advice would you give to your 20-year-old self?
My
20-year-old self. Life advice. So if you met Michel Odent at the age of 20?
I will not give advice. No, because finally, it's much more do not hesitate to learn from unexpected events, something like that. Yeah. Yes.
Can you tell me a story of one of the hardest births you've had?
It's very difficult, very difficult, because the time I was in a hospital in PTV, there have been 15,000 births. I was the only doctor, but there were 6 midwives, and there are, of course, difficulties, unexpected difficulties. We had to face these difficulties in different ways, but I cannot say which one. I cannot.
What is a situation that made you panic?
Panic?
Yes.
Or a situation when... Or there are situations you can work as if in a panic, I'll give you an example. I rarely had holidays. Often I was working continuously. But after a certain time, it happened I took some holidays. And once, I was coming back from holiday, one afternoon, going directly to the hospital to see the latest news. And when I was arriving, an ambulance was arriving at the same time. I looked at what was happening. There was a cord prolapse. A complication, umbilical cord was outside before the birth of the baby. That needs emergency surgery. It's a kind of panic,
Yeah.
So immediately I rushed to the operating theater, the operating room. I found a way to have the people ready in some minutes. There was an atmosphere of panic. I said, Corporal, I was arriving from holiday, they have not seen me for a while, and suddenly I arrive, Corporal, panic. Baby was born alive and everything was okay. But it was a typical example of panic for many reasons, because they were not expecting me and they were not expecting a collapse.
Gosh. How did your knowledge progress, and what did you learn other than the neocortical inhibition?
Oh, many things. Often related to neocortical inhibition, that we have to be careful with doctrines, with dogmas, with rules, established by theoreticians. No? But in fact, it's often related with what is essential, is the inhibiting effect of neocortical activity. For example, during the time when I was in Pithiviers, they introduced electronic fetal monitoring to listen continuously to the heartbeat, thinking now no risk to be born. They will detect immediately complications and so on. In fact, I tried electronic fetal monitoring, and the effect, and this has been proven after that by official studies, that we had more cesarean section. Very often we are anxious for nothing, So it's an example, of we need time when there is something new to evaluate. And after that, there have been many studies, serious studies, what are called randomized control studies, that is very serious, saying the only effect on statistics of the use of continuous electronic fetal monitoring is to increase the rate of cesarean section. It does not change the number of babies alive or healthy at birth. And at the same time, there was something else that new, that theoreticians created new rules introducing baby's father in the birthing room. Until the middle of the 20th century, until even the 1970s, childbirth was women's business. When most babies were born at home, even till 1950, during the father was in the bistro, or he was given a task, because not to distract the women, boiling water, but it was women's business. So suddenly, theoreticians say labor will be easier, faster, if the father can participate in the birth, familiar person, and so on, so on, and so on. And it became a rule, doctrine. Interestingly, it was not created by people directly involved in childbirth. First time, I remember one of the first time when a midwife called me at middle of the night, 2 o'clock at night, telling me a woman's arriving in labor. She has a strong ideas. She wants to keep her husband with her. Can I introduce a man in the birthing room? The midwife had never thought of that. So this idea came from outside. And they said, oh, familiar person and so on, it will be. No, now it's not as simple as that. For sure, I don't want to say more. But so we have to be careful with the doctrines, theories, often introduced by people who are not directly involved in childbirth.
And what is the history? What's the history of childbirth throughout, millennia?
Oh, there is a big turning point. A big turning point. Easy to summarize. During Paleolithic ages, that is to say, millions of years, until about 10,000 years ago, giving birth was an isolated experience. Women used to isolate themselves to give birth. We can say that for almost sure, because some human groups have maintained Paleolithic lifestyles until the 20th century. Along the river Mycenae, South America, in Philippines, Epos and so on, and also South Africa. So we know that in Paleolithic ages, the usual rule where giving birth was a private experience. Women used to isolate themselves to give birth. So the big turning point is recent. It's about 10,000 years ago. That to say, when our ancestors started to dominate nature. But when we talk about the domination of nature by our ancestors, we talk about domestication of plants, agriculture, animal husbandry, domestication of animals. We forget domestication of human beings. And it's incredible what started at that time, 10,000 years ago. At that time, birth became socialized. It became commonplace that when a woman was giving birth, there was somebody else, a woman, at least a woman, with her. It was absolutely new. And there are new beliefs, new rituals. It was socialized a different way. The cultural rules, For example, a very important fact, people don't realize how important it is, that from that time, from what is called the Neolithic Revolution, to say from the time when our ancestors started to dominate nature, human babies were not given the breast immediately after birth. It became a rule to delay the initiation of breastfeeding up to 2 days, 3 days, in the variants. And that's incredibly important. It was almost everywhere. So it means that most human babies, starting from that time, about 10,000 years ago, were deprived of the early colostrum. The colostrum is what the baby can find the breast immediately after birth. We know today that human baby can find the breast during the hour following birth. He knows what to do. And we know how precious it is. Among humans, it's not vital. Human beings can survive without the early colostrum. Well, in other species, they don't survive. But most human beings from that time have survived without consuming the early colostrum. It was a kind of way to manipulate the laws of natural selection, to reinforce the laws of natural selection. It was a big turning point in the history of mankind, to deprive, in fact, a first opportunity to contest the fact that we are mammals, I'm writing a paper at the present time titled, "Are we still mammals?" Are we still mammals? And of course, the question starts at that time, when at the end of the Paleolithic ages, people don't realize the importance of this fact. They talk about agriculture, animal husbandry, but what about human beings? No colostrum. Are we still mammals? Less and less and less and less.
Related to natural selection, what does a woman want and need from a man?
What you mean, a modern woman?
Yes.
I think today, it's complex because so many kinds of men, so kind of women. is very difficult today. You know, until recently, people were finding a partner, in fact, in the same human group or not far away. Now, such a diverse opportunities, you know, now such mixture of genes between people from Europe, from Asia, from elsewhere, and people don't, they find partner, issue of sexual attraction, you know, rather than what can, it's a very complex issue. It's a new way of thinking, it's a new way of thinking.
Yes, and I was thinking, especially related to birth, and how you're saying that when the neocortex, the thinking part of the brain, is deactivated, that's when birth becomes easier.
Yes, it's a prerequisite.
And the role, in order to have a better birth, is to
give birth.
To protect, but to let go.
Yeah.
And in a way, could that be the role of the man, essentially? Because the woman that is giving birth, she is
who can be the protector? Yeah.
Who is so vulnerable.
Yes.
Would the role of the man maybe simply be to protect?
It's a good question, because now that we start to understand that the basic need of a labeled woman is to feel protected against any inhibiting factor, the question is, who is apparently or possibly or theoretically, who is the ideal protective person? We can enlarge the topic in general. Who is the typical protective person for human beings originally? She's the mother. The mother is a typical protective person. A midwife originally was a mother figure. So perhaps we have reached a time when, of course, we have to adapt to particular case. We cannot change everything overnight. But we have to understand that finally we'll have to rediscover who a midwife was originally. A midwife originally was a technician, was not a technician trained to follow protocols originally. Originally, a midwife was a mother figure, protective, and I thought so that's a good question. It's possible, meanwhile, as in a period of transition, in some cases, that some men, although men cannot have the experience of giving birth, some men can behave like a protector. I had recently a message from a woman who had 3 children. She said, when I was giving birth at home, my father was my husband, my partner, was as if blocking the door, protecting. So it's a good question. Who can be the ideal protective person? Ideally, it should be probably a mother figure, but it's not simple because there is a conflict of generation. Most women who give birth now have mothers who have not given birth. They are not typical mother figures. So it's not simple.
So
we cannot change everything overnight.
Yes.
And it's not sure that we can change something.
So then what would the classical, traditional masculine role be?
You know, until now, it depends upon the species, but until now, childbirth was women's business. Women were not involved in our species. There were species where males were involved, but as protectors. For example, dolphins, elephants, it seems that often males can be around looking outside, protecting in case there would be predators. So, a general rule, we can say that originally, among humans, birth was women's business. It's not simple, the change has been gradual. How can we now go back to and prolong the life of human beings? Because it's becoming serious. Think that today, after interfering in the birth process, we have reached a time unique in the history of mankind, when most women, by far, don't have to release a cocktail of hormones of love to have babies. To give birth, originally, a woman had to release a hormonal flow, oxytocin, prolactin, endorphin, a cocktail of hormone of love. Today, easy to replace these hormones, pharmacological substitutes, cesarean section. Today, most hormones of love are made redundant in the period surrounding birth at the scale of the human species. That's new. Either pharmacological substitute or cesarean section. How to reverse that? Is it possible? That's today the question. Today we are at a time when we have to wonder about how can the human species survive when we are losing the status of mammals. We are not mammals anymore. We are losing the status of mammals. How long can we survive after losing the status of mammal? That's a big question today. We are in the age of questions.
And you're going to be answering that question? Or
it's too early to answer questions.
In your latest book?
But it's much better we are at a time when we are constantly in unprecedented situation, absolutely new. What to do in an unprecedented situation? What can you do? You must first phrase the appropriate question. And you have to analyze the unprecedented situation, analyze what's happening, and then phrase the appropriate question. Don't try to go further. Be careful with people who provide answers, theories. We are in the age of questions. Be careful not to go too far.
What was the most difficult moment of your life?
I cannot say yet. My life is not finished.
How can a young person reduce stress from the mind?
I don't think there is a recipe, because many reasons to be in a stressful situation, how to escape a stressful situation. I don't think there is any recipe.
How has your diet and eating routine been?
About my diet, an important point regarding my diet is that I have understood long time ago that we are very special primates, members of the chimpanzee family, very special because we have a huge brain. And there is a priority among humans, is how to feed this huge brain. And when you phrase this question, you understand that if you have the possibility to consume on a regular basis food from the sea. Any kind of food from the sea, from seaweed, sardines, and so on, with iodine as well, special fatty acid and iodine. You have not to worry too much about. You are sure to satisfy basic need of a human being. So often I can say to people who, particularly when a woman is expecting a baby, but in general, we must not forget that we are very special, unique among all mammals, because we have a huge brain. And in terms of nutrition, the first issue is, are we sure that we satisfy the special needs, the specific needs, nutritional needs of our huge brain?
How important is it to have a loving companion?
That's a difficult question because it depends on which culture you belong to. Many kinds of relationship between men and women according to the era you are considering in the history of mankind. So there is no special rule. Probably rules are very different in Paleolithic ages compared with Neolithic, post-Neolithic ages with many variants.
So tell me, when is the new book going to be released?
At the present time, I am planning to bring together some short text, about 20 texts. I have until now published in social media, very short text.
Okay.
And the title is supposed to be, it's a bilingual book. All texts are published in English and French. The title is in French, Le crépuscule d'Homo. Crépuscule means the dusk, the end, the dusk of Homo. And Homo can be understood as the author, or is Homo, or the species. So this is what I'm working at that present time. It's supposed to be my last book.
Michel, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
So I think we managed quite well, yes.
Yes.